spooky now. Okay. It's a little bit like
You have a
Motzei
lamp, maybe?
Shabbos kind of Avirah right now. Yeah.
Do you have a lamp, possibly?
No, we're just going to turn a couple of the lights back on, or we didn't have a blackout. I just want to make that clear. All right, now we're very bright again. So we're just going
I
to.
can't even see who's on. I don't see anybody's screens. Is there anybody behind all of the 81 people who are on here? Anybody?
Sure.
there?
We can't hear you. We can't
Okay,
hear you.
Not to hear you on your video.
No, maybe I'll just.
Well, there are a few people here.
There you
But-
are.
And you're not, you're.
Yes, there is.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
like.
another 70 have to go
On
on
your-
before Rabbi Schachter will be satisfied.
What was that?
So another 70 screens have to go on before we're
Yeah,
satisfied.
okay, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Wait. Kima.
Why are we hearing back? Am I the only one who's hearing back an echo?
That's Jay and Mike. Okay. Everyone, please keep yourself on mute.
I'm just trying to find a better spot, but now I got pool cues behind me. Is that all right? You know, I don't have a bookshelf like you do, Rabbi. Like I'm not holding in the whole bookshelf look.
And humble, I got it. I understand.
Let's see if we do this.
Let's see, anybody else's screens? Anybody want to turn on their screen so we can feel like we're together at least? Anybody here? Okay, it's nice to see some people are here.
Yeah.
That's Ruth.
Hallway light.
What do you know?
Hallway light.
Hi, Ruth Wallach.
Oh no. Let's see if we can get a little more light.
There we go. Okay. Everyone can say hello to each other. You don't even need to say hello to me.
It's nice to see people without masks. There you go. That was good.
Anybody else on that I haven't seen yet? Hi, Chaim.
An extra 20 people have joined the chat in the past couple minutes, so
Okay.
the level of satisfaction has gone from another 70 people to another 80 people.
And hello to the Sokals. Nice to see you.
Hello to Rabbi Chaim Liebtag. Wow, it's good to see you. Please God, I see you next in Jerusalem, my friend. Is this lighting okay now? Are we good?
I think so. I personally, I for one was waiting for the lighting situation.
That was actually my
to-
first question I was going to ask you is how does one get a shine on their face? Like how does that happen? But I guess that one's out.
Yep. We're gonna have to start with question 2.
I think, Rabbi Schachter, what do you think? Time to get started?
Time to get started. I haven't been watching. Are people still coming on or we're pretty much settled?
I think we've hit an equilibrium. More people are turning on their videos, which is nice, but I think we are more or less there. For those of you who are new here, welcome to In Conversation, a series we've been running now, let's say 3 months since since winter Shabbos started ending earlier, and is a lovely way to spend Motzei Shabbos together. You get to hear from, if you spend your time wisely, the people you hear from most, from Rabbanim in our community, and a twist, you get to hear them in conversation with one of their congregants whose stories you may or may not get to hear on a regular basis. We are honored to have with us not only a terrific, prominent, well-known, incredible rabbi, but also one of the few men who sat together and had this idea in the first place. So we really come full circle. Very excited to have with us Rabbi Shay Schachter of the Young Israel of Woodmere and just about a dozen other places. Before we get started, please just, if you have questions for either of the hosts, Rabbi Schachter will introduce his guest. Drop them in the chat box. Great question, shortly. drop it in the chat box, and it'll get answered. ou.org/conversations if you're on chat, somebody who wants to join. In the meantime, bechavod, Schachter.
Okay, Shavua Tov, good tavach, everybody. Nice to be back again for a second week in a row. And I'm happy that all of you have chosen to join us once again. I find it much easier when we're having Zoom programming if people turn on their screens so we can feel as if we are talking to each other. We can read your faces when we make an off-color comment that you don't appreciate. We can read that you don't appreciate that and understand that it's time to move on. And just that we can be able to connect a little bit more with each other, see each other's faces, and appreciate the fact that we're spending time together on Motzei Shabbos. So thank you to all of you for joining. Thank you for being together with us and being a part of our community and our lives. And we'll get straight into our discussion for this evening. Miriam Wallach really does not need so much of an introduction. I think she will do her own self-introduction, and what it is that she does, how it is that she got into it, what is exciting about it, what is challenging about her line of work. And just give me 1 second. I see that my computer is out of battery. Give me 1 second here. Miriam, but you can begin.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you to the OU for hosting this fabulous forum. Creating community and sustaining community during COVID is certainly a global challenge, and using Zoom for this kind of an opportunity, especially on a Motzei Shabbat, where there's a little bit of lull, especially on an early Shabbos, is really a great opportunity, and certainly was a great idea. And I promise to keep my off-colored remarks to a minimum. So hopefully the facial expressions will all be smiles. We'll move ahead with that. So and thank you to you, Rabbi Schachter, for inviting me tonight. It's always fun to speak to you, either whether we're doing this with a live camera, with a live mic, or we're just schmoozing in general. For me, Rabbi Schachter is a great source of comfort and expertise. And while in my line of work, which I'll go through in a second, there aren't so many people you can turn to in a variety of situations, he is one for me, and I appreciate that. So to make a very long story short, I am the general manager of the Nachum Segal Network, as well as Nachum's manager of his career. I've been doing this about close to 9 years now. How I got into it is a funny story. It's not really a job for which anyone prepares you for. It's not like you're going to college and getting graduate degrees in becoming somebody's manager. There's a tremendous amount of gut and instinct and chemistry that has to go with it. In terms of the network, I'm responsible for basically a lot of the continuity of the programming, decision-making, etc. Nachum and I have, thank God, built a very good rapport with each other, and I thank him for, shall we say, as I've said before, taking a chance with me 9 years ago. I was a middle school English teacher for 15 years, teaching middle school English and literature to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. I have a master's degree in English and a master's degree in education. And while one might think that neither one of those degrees would be applicable to the job I presently have, the career that I'm in, it's totally untrue. I use my degrees every single day, and there's a sort of fearlessness with which I occupy the space I live in. And what I mean by that is that I decided a long time ago that if I can keep an 8th grade classroom of boys quiet, I can really do anything. So there's an opportunity for this fearlessness to work in different parts of our lives, whether it's going into a deal, a business, discussion or decision that has to be made, and walking into a big meeting with an air of carelessness or freedom and an attitude of, I'm ready to walk away from this at any moment because I can, then you're able to conduct yourself in a different way. So while there are people in my lives who would appreciate if I was a little less, risky or a little bit more aware of my surroundings, it's sort of the way I handle myself. So Nachum and I started about 9 years ago. I had interviewed with him about 2 years before that to have a similar position.
It was a
For
2-year-long
reasons.
interview process, from what I understand.
Sorry, say it again.
I said it was a 2-year-long interview process, from what I understand.
Yeah. Number one, it's amazing that we still work together considering how that interview process went. And it's even more amazing that we're now related. So thank God for both things. As a side point, as you know, it's not a secret, Nachum's son and my daughter were married in September. So not only are we working together on a daily basis, but Baruch Hashem, we were able to make a simcha together as well, which is very, very gratifying, and probably the most gratifying part of this work. They are a fabulous couple.
So I wanna just pick up on that. Let's just hear a little bit more about how you got into this whole field of media, and what were the beginnings of this career path that I wouldn't say you chose for yourself, but I guess landed upon you.
Right. So I joke that I tripped and fell in a hole, and that's sort of the spontaneity with which this happened. I had loved teaching for a very long time and had decided that if at any point I wasn't as excited to walk into the classroom as I was on the first day I ever walked into the classroom, then it wasn't fair to my students to continue to walk into that classroom. So I was ready for a bit of a career change, and Nachum was looking for someone to help launch this idea of a network. And this was a good 11, 12 years ago, where an online digital network was the most ridiculous and esoteric and out of the box concept. I mean, what does that even mean? We're all tuning dials in our cars. What does that mean to be unplugged? What does that mean to be digital? What does that mean to be in a cloud? These were terms that nobody was using. So for a number of so I was recommended, I should just give Mayor Fertig credit. I was recommended by Mayor Fertig to Yigal Segal, who's Nachum's brother, Rabbi Yigal Segal, to be interviewed for this position. I was interviewed by Yigal and then spent some time with Nachum at WFMU in the days that we were still at WFMU. And that was a no-go, a non-starter in terms of us hitting it off initially. I have a habit, which for better or for worse is just the way I operate, is sometimes I'm not discerning enough as to when somebody wants to hear my opinion on something. And so let's just say our first interaction was not so positive. Suffice it to say, 2 years goes by and he is ready to revisit this opportunity and really take this idea of an online network and really launch it. And we spent some time talking about it. We had done a bunch of different projects over about a 10-month span, a radio show here, producing this here, like a bunch of things just to get our feet wet and see how we were working together. And at the time, I was also being interviewed and considered for a position at a very large, prominent institution. And I didn't get that position. And I found out at a Yankee game. I was at a Yankee game, Steven and I were at a game, and I found out I was not being offered that position. And at that moment, I texted Nachum and I said, if ever there was a time for you to figure out how to hire me full-time, the time is now. And we met the next morning and the rest is history.
Wow, so that's amazing. But again, I seem to remember that there was a media part of your career without Nachum Segal. Am I correct in that assumption?
You are. So I was writing for the Jewish Star for a while, and then I wrote for.
Not what I'm talking about. Not what I'm talking
I'll get there. I wrote, and then for about a year before. It started before I started working for Nachum, and then continued in my first year of working for Nachum, is that I was a talking head on Varney & Co. on Fox Business. Jake Novak, who was a producer at the time on that show, had seen something that I wrote or whatever and contacted me on Facebook. And I was like, who is this guy? You know, what, like, he's telling me he's a producer. It doesn't make any sense to me. And all of a sudden, I text Mayor Fertig. I'm like, have you ever heard of this guy? And all of a sudden he's like, yeah. He's real. He's real. Don't say anything ridiculous. Don't blow him off. I said, okay. And like 3 weeks later, I was doing my first appearance on Fox. And between that time, I hired a media trainer, basically a media consultant, whose name is Jess Toddfeld, who does a lot of media training, and he taught me how to behave on camera, and how to think on your feet, and how to answer questions as an Orthodox Jew, or I should say how to answer difficult questions, and then how, for me as an Orthodox Jew, to be able to answer them on live national television without, shall we say, bringing shame to me, my family, and my entire nation. So there is a, there was a lot of, let's throw her into the water and see how she swims, but I had been given very good training. So that basically spanned into my first year working with Nachum, and that was interesting. It would be on a Friday, I'd get picked up by a car, I'd go into the city.
Meaning you were only on once a week.
I was on once a week, once every couple of weeks. It depended on the frequency. Like, at one point they needed me on for December 25th because, that's the day you bring in all the Orthodox Jews because those are the only ones who will take your call that day. So, it depended when they needed me. It wasn't a consistent rotation, but when they needed like a maternal, parental, loud voice with somebody who, has a level of articulation and comfort in front of a camera and isn't necessarily, shall we say, intimidated, you meet very interesting people in the green room at Fox.
Right. So what we're interested to hear more about is, what were some of those challenges about being on national TV, being an Orthodox Jew, balancing that? I'm curious to hear, what that was like and how you handled that.
So I think that the first challenge that I had, even before I knew that I was, like, when my first appearance was going to be, was, this is going to sound crazy, but was buying a sheitel. And I think this is a funny term, I was a religious hat wearer. Like, I wore hats. I wore hats every day to work, and that's how I covered my hair, and that's how I handled it. But I needed to buy a sheitel, and I had never seen myself in a full sheitel before. And so that process of examining myself and understanding how I would now appear in front of other people wearing a sheitel was something I had to consider. And then going through hair and makeup at Fox with my sheitel was a conversation. It was oh, you're wearing a wig? Yes, I'm wearing a wig. Oh, you have the best wig I've ever seen at Fox. Oh, thank you. That is very nice. Where do you get your wigs? And why are you wearing a wig? And, all those conversations. And then there was the, can I get you something to drink that's not in the green room? Are there any special things that you want? I'm like, no, we drink water. Water's fine. All of the initial nervousness. Also, when somebody hears that you have 6 children, it's like, wow, you must be, super religious. Well, I also like kids. There's a lot of dispelling. I had a conversation once with somebody who owns her own TV network, and she was looking for somebody to come on board, and had a seat in the White House press corps and the whole thing, like, legit. And she comes from a very affluent and very well-known family. And the first thing she said to me was, she says to me, you have 6 children. Don't you think you're polluting the world? And I said, no, I think I'm making the world better. And hi, I'm Miriam. Like, we hadn't even done names yet. So there was oh, she must be a religious fanatic. She covers her hair. She has 6 children. She shuts her phone at 4:10. Like, there has to be, those kind of things needed to automatically be dispelled. And
did you feel you were in a position to successfully dispel that? Were you?
I think that I've always been the person that you ask the uncomfortable Jewish questions to. We were just on a Delta flight a couple of weeks ago, and I was going through the snack boxes trying to figure out which of them had more OU products in them, because clearly none of them are marked fully kosher. So I was going through them, and the flight attendant says to me, I'm sorry if this can I ask you what it means to be kosher? I'm like, not a problem. I'm that person. So in terms of my level of comfort in discussing being an Orthodox Jew in public circles, I'm good with that. I think it's that confidence that allows me to speak proudly about being an Orthodox Jewish woman, and therefore makes it more accessible to other people. Do I have the right skills? I had a good yeshiva education. I had a mom who worked full-time in a public sphere, and often had to deal with a number of obviously religious issues and Erev Shabbos and all of those things, and how to balance that. And it's and I've also been trained really well with my media training. I can explain things, so I think I'm just lucky.
Were you nervous at any point that maybe you would be asked questions that you didn't know how to answer?
Yes, and when you're asked, and I hope this is not an off-colored conversation.
When you call it a Shiloh, I'm just never sure, what to do. I just never know what to do. But
Well,
because I know I can get back to you. Here, sometimes you need a response immediately.
yes, well, when you're asked on live television, and if this is a cringe moment for people on camera, I apologize. But when you're asked on national live television whether Orthodox Jewry supports abortion, you need to think very quickly. So that was a moment that I was very nervous about, but handled it. And you don't want to, nobody wants to, they don't want to see you sweat, and you don't want to be seen sweating. So the confidence and the calm with which you deliver the information that you have, delivery is everything. So, I wasn't walking off set, and I think I gave an answer that was both satisfactory to the host and was enough that I could go home safely and not have stepped in anything.
You didn't know these questions were coming?
No, the beautiful thing about at least being prepped for Varney and Co. is that I'd be given a topic 24 hours in advance, and then the morning of the appearance, I would get basically a call telling me what the new topic was, having basically nothing to do with the topic I was told the day before, and get ready to go. So they refer to it as basically like combat television. It's guerrilla TV. You have no idea what the questions are going to be. You have to be ready with an answer. You have to think 30 seconds ahead. So right now, I'm considering where my answers are going to go with you, and hopefully I'm going to continue to be in the right direction, so that the content that I'm giving is content that I'm in control of. That's all part of my media training.
Do you feel that you gave a sensitivity to either the non-Jews you worked with, or to maybe some Jews who didn't have an appreciation for a lifestyle like you live? Do you feel you gave them a certain sense of understanding and sensitivity? Do you feel?
I hope so. I mean, you're never sure, because nobody wants to be judged. And certainly it's not, I don't care what anyone else does in their own home, and what I do is good for me and for my family. And, taking it back to the conversation, to the question that we had a second ago, where I mentioned the anecdote of the person who asked me whether with 6 children I was polluting the earth. She had basically rejected all religion, and she grew up conservative Jew, reform, not Orthodox, and she had rejected everything, and basically wanted to make sure that I wasn't there to judge her. And I wasn't, and I'm not. That's not my role in life.
So at what stage did you feel that you were no longer going to have that kind of job, that kind of profession, career?
Well, the beautiful thing about cable TV is that they love you, and then they never remember your name. So it's it was basically like a mutual, they're done with me. I had a good run there, and it's not for me. I mean, I don't want at the drop of a hat have to run into Manhattan to be on TV for 5 to 7 minutes to then go home and put up my kugel, which is what would happen on a Friday. Like, that to me was the big joke. I remember one time I left Fox and I asked the driver, classic Jewish mother, but initially when they told me that they would send cars for me before my first appearance, I'm like, oh, I can take the train. And somebody's like, what is wrong with you? They're going to send a car. So I get in the car, and on my way home from one appearance, I asked if we could just stop for a cup of coffee. So a black car pulls up to a curb in Manhattan, and somebody with sunglasses on gets out, who's just clearly had her hair and makeup done. People want to know who it is. And I'm laughing. I'm like, it's just me. I'm going home to put up the chicken soup. Like, that to me was the most important thing. My family comes first, my kids come first, my chicken soup comes first. That life is not for me. I am much, much happier doing what I'm doing. That life was fun. Don't get me wrong. It was fun. It was interesting. I learned a lot about myself. But that is not for me. What I'm doing now, I've said this before about working with Nachum and for Nachum and managing the network, that I've never worked this hard in my life, and I've never been this happy working this hard. So it's a tremendous amount of fulfillment in knowing that the content and the community that is being created by the Nachum Segal Network is something that benefits my people, our people. That is so gratifying. And that's hard work that I want to do. You know, being on TV is fun and everything, but that doesn't benefit the Jewish people. And I don't want to be asked uncomfortable questions that challenge me as an Orthodox Jew just because it makes for good TV. It doesn't make for good Jewish Miriam Wallach life. So this is good work.
So for those who may not be as intimately familiar with the Nachum Segal Network, what is it about working with them and a lot of the behind the scenes that you do that makes you feel so fulfilled and playing such a meaningful role in the Jewish community as a whole?
I think
I would venture to say that most people would see the Nachum Segal Network as another show, just, you know, another station, another app. I'm curious what you see in that line of work that makes you feel so fulfilled.
we have a great community. We have great listeners. We get tremendous feedback. I don't have to tell you that when the Jewish community is happy with you, you don't know about it. When they're angry with you, you hear about it plenty. So when it comes to getting unbelievable feedback and thank yous and support in a variety of ways from your listeners, it makes you get up in the morning. It reminds you that what you're doing is the right thing, and that there's value in making sure that the programming goes on consistently, that Nachum at 6 a.m. plays Moda'ani, and that everyone is a part of that community. And Nachum has been on the air for, you know, close to 38 years at this point. I came along almost 9 years ago. I didn't make Nachum Segal, and I didn't make the brainchild and the strength behind this network. There are radio streams out there, Jewish music streams, other people who do interviews, but nobody does what we do. We run our own race. We're in our own marathon. We respect everyone else who's doing other things that provide content, good content to the Jewish community. But having Nachum Segal as the name of, and the brand and the personality behind our community is everything. And so when you have a Mayor Weingarten talking about Israel, and you have a Charlie Harari who's giving inspiration 30 minutes a week on our network, and you have people who during COVID are clamoring to be part of something because we are all apart from everything. And they know that every single morning at 6 a.m., Moda'ani by Regesh is going to play and JM in the AM is going to start. That's golden. There's nothing better than that. It's no shock to people, and we don't hide it, that our numbers and our listenership was incredibly strong and continues to be strong, but had a massive boost during COVID. And not that COVID's over. I'm not sitting here saying COVID's over, but you understand what I mean. When we were all locked in our homes and we couldn't go to shul at all, and we couldn't do anything except get food from the supermarket, there was always JM in the AM. That kind of continuity globally is invaluable. There's no words to encompass that kind of reliability. And we were hearing from people everywhere, because
when you say everywhere, I'm just trying to understand what everywhere means.
Whether it's UK, it's Australia, it's Israel, it doesn't matter. It's all over the United States. It's the Canadians, it's the South Americans, you name it. We're hearing from people all over the place. I don't know who it is in Azerbaijan who downloaded our app, but I really hope you appreciate everything that we're doing. And I know that you do. And the people in Ireland who are listening, because we do know which countries have downloaded, or I should say, people in which countries have downloaded our app. Everyone is part of something. Everyone is part of what we're doing when you log on at 6 a.m. Eastern time and hear Regesh by Moda'ani, and at 6:04 or 6:05, you hear Nachum Segal welcoming you to JM and the AM. It's a tremendous thing. So when we went to Dubai, the feedback that we got, we went right before Hanukkah, and we were home for Hanukkah. And I do have to give a credit to my youngest, who is on this Zoom, because, you know, it's your kids who keep you grounded, right? It's your kids, it's your spouse who remind you at the end of the day that what goes on in your home is more important than what goes on anywhere else. So in playing, I see you there, kid. So in planning this trip and in conversations about going to Dubai, and of course, that in and of itself is a cool conversation. And then what? You're going to Dubai in the middle of COVID? Yeah, I am. I'm going to take 400 COVID tests, and we're going to be safe, and we're going to go. But when my daughter said to me, what, you're not going to be home for the first night of Hanukkah? And I said, no, of course we are. Yes, we are going to be home for the first night of Hanukkah. And true to that word, we were all home, and the programming that we did overseas was scheduled around that question that she posed to me, because that was important to her, and therefore it was important to me. So we were all home with our families on the first night of Hanukkah. And so but the feedback that we got about Dubai, and from where we got it, and the excitement that people felt from the shows that we did, where we were able to highlight the Emirati community and show the strength and the resolve and the beauty of the Jewish community there, was just an incredible experience. But we hear from so many people from so many different places that we know you're out there. We know that this community exists. So even when none of us could go anywhere, we were all somewhere together.
So I assume most people on this meeting tonight have not had the opportunity to visit Dubai. And I'm just curious if you can share with us a little bit about what was uplifting, what was inspiring, what was interesting about that trip, and give us a little bit of insight into that.
So Dubai is crazy, and in a good way, because it looks like a Batman movie set, like it looks like something out of a sci-fi movie, and then you realize that all of those buildings are real. Dubai is probably one of the safest places I have felt to walk as a Jewish woman. And as a person who was knocked down about 1.5 years ago in Manhattan and called an expletive Jew, and literally on Grand Street on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, to be able to say that I felt incredibly safe walking through Dubai after having been accosted in Manhattan is probably says a lot. And to Dave, who just commented at the bottom, yes, 100% true, and I reported it. And just as a side point, the irony of the gentleman who knocked into me was that he was wearing a New England Patriots hat, and in the back of my head, I just wondered whether he knew that football team was owned by a Jewish man. But anyway, there was a lot to be stunned by in terms of Dubai, the respect shown to the Jews and to the Israelis by the Emirati community, the welcome, the warmth. I mean, on the heels of the Abraham Accords, it is stunning to see how happy they are to be able to welcome Jews and Israelis into both their lives personally and professionally. It's an astounding point to note that the best mussar that we heard, that I wish many people in this country would hear, is that you can't make peace with people with whom you are constantly fighting with. You need to start with common ground. And so the virtue of the Abraham Accords is not only the building of these relationships and the opening of these business opportunities between Israel and a variety of Arab countries, but it's also the establishment of common ground. And this person said to me, who is an Emirati native, and he is a member of one of the 5 most affluent families in Dubai. And he said to me, you can't make peace with an enemy. You have to make peace with friends. And so we come to the table and we find things we have in common. And then from there, we're able to tackle the more difficult situations. And that to me was astounding, both at that time, which was a month ago, and now as we have watched the events unfold in the last 5 weeks, both globally and of course in this country, both on a local level, and I do mean in the 5 towns and in New York, and then on a national level, that we are lacking the diplomacy. We don't have diplomats anymore. We don't have statesmen. We have people who want to be right. And that is, that's heartbreaking to me, because you can't lead if you don't see life as gray. Life is gray. There's so much gray out there. And that's an important aspect that we learned from this wonderful Emirati sheik who, in his beautiful white clothing, his white garb, and everything about him was just pristine. And when he is sitting there speaking about finding common ground with Israelis and how much we have in common, it's like, wow. And those moments are precious. They're precious, and they happen. There are these wow, eye-opening moments that I find that we have in this job. That
So maybe you can bring us into that a little bit more. I'm sure there have been many other wow moments in different experiences, different communities. Some I've heard about over the years, but I'm not sure many of our listeners have heard. Maybe you can share top 1 or 2.
Sure. So about 5 years ago, we hosted a concert in La Victoire in Paris, which is the main shul in Paris. It was a couple weeks after the terrorist attack at the kosher supermarket. And we were there just a number of weeks later, and we had been planning this.
If you can just invite me into that a little bit. We were there means on your initiative. Do they invite you?
Yeah, no. We got ourselves in there. The Nachum Segal Network has a non-for-profit non-for-profit arm called the Foundation for Jewish Broadcasting. And the Foundation for Jewish Broadcasting, as part of that initiative, has as part of their program, part of that, under that umbrella, I should say, has the Jewish Unity Initiative. And the Jewish Unity Initiative goes into a variety of different communities, depending on the need, and brings Jewish music to that community, or brings chizuk to that community in a time of need. We have gone to Houston after floods and brought Mordechai Shapiro there to literally just perform for families and give them a moment of respite from all that they've been going through, and to give them a moment of chizuk and to tell them that the whole Jewish world is behind you. We're there. So after the terrorist attack in Paris, we decided that the Jewish Unity Initiative was going to Paris. And the Parisian Jewish community was nervous about us. I mean, they hadn't heard of us, and obviously the language barrier makes it very difficult to communicate. But we hosted a free Jewish music concert in La Victoire for the 3,000 Jews who joined us that night. And in a wow moment that I'll never forget, as part of the lineup that evening was Yehoram Gaon. And he had flown in from Israel, as did David Fadida, who produced the event, and his entire cast and crew. And it was nothing like they had ever seen. And also, like, they weren't paying for tickets. We were really just asking them to come and be part of a night where we would all sing together. The power of music, the power of Jews singing together is such a unifier and brings so much light when there's darkness, that hearing Yehoram Gaon lead 3,000 Jews in the song Kol Ha'ulam Kulo is nothing that I'll ever forget. And La Victoire is one of these unbelievable, beautifully cathedral-like shuls that you imagine. And the music and the singing and everything reverberated. And even years later, in strange situations, we would run into, I mean, and a number of times, Nachum and I ran into Parisian Jews who were there that night, who couldn't believe that we were the people behind it. And one person in an elevator in Yerushalayim, when he realized that Nachum was the guy he saw on stage, literally threw his arms around Nachum and thanked him. So, you know, there's a moment like that when we went to Venice on the quincentennial anniversary of the freeing of the ghetto. We went and did a concert there. We spent Shabbat in the ghetto, and then Motzei Shabbos, we had a concert, and we invited everyone to come. And there is a lot of division, unfortunately, in many Jewish communities, and two of the leaders of that community don't talk to each other. They will not attend each other's shul. They will not attend each other's anything. And instead, that night, they ended up dancing together in the middle of the circle. And we couldn't believe what we were watching. But there are these moments that remind you of the hard work that you're doing and the validity that it gives you, but also just the power of music. You know, we could go back and look at all of the beautiful recordings, and the purity of some of the songs that we sing are just from our davening. And I say just in quotation marks. It could be 3 words. And then, of course, you know, the most popular song right now, and I'm not saying this from I've been keeping schedule of this, but I'm saying the song, Thank You Hashem, of course. Those are 3 words that we have kids singing over and over again. They don't have to know any of the other words in the song, but they're singing Thank You Hashem over and over again. There's a beauty in the fact that Jewish music provides this uplift. And I've been so blessed to see it so many times.
Wow. I do remember fondly before you were preparing to go to Pittsburgh, and then as you were there, hearing the emotional side of that story. But I'm sure there are so many experiences like that. And for many of us who don't have the opportunity to be there and to give the comfort and the strength in those kinds of situations, I know that you feel like an ambassador and you feel like a shaliach or a shlucha in many ways. And I'm just curious to hear about some of those kinds of trips that you've done as well.
Well, I can tell you that, not to mention the Nefesh B'Nefesh trips that I have been so lucky to be on. I think I joke that I've made Aliyah 7 times at this point. I'm the only Jew they keep sending back. But we have, Nachum and I have had the great zchut to be on, I'm pretty sure it's 7 Nefesh B'Nefesh charter flights, a plane that is filled with Jewish heroes who are leaving whatever creature comforts they have here in North America, and they're leaving and they're going to build lives in the only place that the Jewish people have a true future. And it's an incredibly humbling experience. And it's also an incredible opportunity to both inspire our listeners and our viewers, but to be a fly on the wall when they get off the plane and they kiss the ground and they're bringing their children to a place where they can live and be proud free Jews and help build the Jewish nation. And it's an incredible thing. And every time we do it, we're astounded by the fact that it doesn't get old. It doesn't get old. It's an amazing, amazing thing. And last summer, with everything going on with COVID, there were so many things that we missed. We missed being at Yom NCSY, and that's a shout out to David Cutler and everybody who make Yom NCSY happen. Yom NCSY is a fabulous experience, and we missed them. We really did, and we missed our Nefesh B'Nefesh flight. We did. There were a bunch of, I mean, the number of Olim, don't anybody for a second think that Aliyah wasn't, I mean, super, super successful this year. Thank God that it was, but there was no charter flight. There was no one plane that we were able to be a part of. Plus, I mean, here's the great irony of life right now. I can walk freely as a Jew in Dubai, but I cannot get into Israel. So we were not getting on that plane for anything, even though we would have landed and turned around and got back on another plane, but that was not happening. So being able to bring each Nefesh B'Nefesh flight and hear those stories and those anecdotes and those dreams and wishes from those Olim, and to be able to highlight Rabbi Yoshua Fass and Tony Gelbart and all of their incredible work and bring it all to our listeners, that is golden. And yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I have been also privileged to be in Pittsburgh during the Shloshim, right after the massacre, at the Tree of Life Synagogue. And no, there was no musical component to that show. That was not something we were doing. And a year later, we went back and we spoke to a number of the survivors of that event. And we spoke to a bunch of different people who are part of the healing and the rebuilding. And Pittsburgh is a fabulous community. And actually, Nachum and I were just talking the other day, the butlers of Pittsburgh are incredible human beings. And Uri Butler, I mean, I only wish Uri Butler was on this Zoom right now, but Uri Butler is one of our favorite people. And I said to Nachum, I'm like, we've got to go to Pittsburgh just to see Uri. And if only Pittsburgh wasn't 8 hours away, we probably would. But
Miriam, I just want to point out, I know that your kids are trying to get your attention, but they're definitely distracting me more than they're distracting you. I guess that's part of your media training.
yeah, I don't even notice them, to be honest.
Okay, in real life, kids all know in real life you are noticed, but it's just on this call that maybe you're not being noticed as much. So let's hear. So you're in Pittsburgh?
So, you know, we love Pittsburgh is great, and Houston, and we've done shows in so many different places at this point. But again, just being able to facilitate the narrative of the Jewish community, how there is so much that can bring us together, and that the Nachum Segal Network and JM and the AIM are a place where people can come together. And we hear from them, and we hear from, and we get feedback on the content, and we know when you're happy, and we know when you're not happy, and we do our best to strengthen that community on a daily basis, because there's a major commitment here to making sure that the Jewish community is strong. And that voice that people hear, that Nachum Segal voice, is a unifier.
So here's an important question for the community, and that is, since most of us do not have the opportunities like people like you might have, what should a community member do to try to show their empathy and compassion and sympathy or inclusion in an exciting moment like a Nefesh B'Nefesh flight, in a difficult moment like Pittsburgh Tree of Life Synagogue? How should an average community member leverage their own talents to try to participate and make other people feel that that they are communicating together with others who really care?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure that I have a good answer. But I think it starts by just talking about it. You talk about it on the immediate level, and you talk about it in your shuls. And you know, one of the very meaningful. Listen, I'm a young Israel Woodmere shul goer. I was in shul this morning. I love going to shul. I missed shul terribly until we could come back. But one of the things that we have on the wall on a rotating digital screen are the names of the 11 who were murdered in Pittsburgh. And that happened a couple of years ago, but we're not forgetting. And we're still cycling that name, so that when you walk through the shul and you're in the lobby and you see their names, you take a moment, you remember. And those moments are when it starts. When we're talking about it at our Shabbos lunch tables, please God, we should get together with friends and family soon at Shabbos lunch tables. But when we're talking about it on small levels, those small levels is what begets the bigger level. And then there's the opportunity to help support the people who are able to be a part of it on a more immediate level. And making sure that those people are strengthened and emboldened to do that kind of communal work, to be able to go to Dubai and be a part of those things, because they make you a part of it also. And I think those things are important. But then there are also the small things. You know, when you get when for example, this happened semi-recently, when I get a handwritten letter from a listener. My mother passed away a year and a half ago. A year and a half later, I get a handwritten letter from somebody who, you know, wanted to express their condolences, even though my mother passed away a year and a half ago, had never had the chance to do it and still does it. That meant the world. The gestures, small, big, it doesn't matter. The gestures, the conversations, they make such an impact, and they help you keep going.
So sometimes people feel that if I'm going to send a letter, it's intrusive. They don't want to hear from me. They're being bombarded. Who am I? They never heard of me. And I'm just curious, from your interaction on a very personal level with many of these kinds of individuals, is that something you would agree with? Is that something that you think is a mistaken impression that people have?
I think that every warm, good gesture comes across as a good gesture. And I don't think they have to be bold gestures, and I don't think they have to be big gestures. But when somebody knows you're thinking about them and they've taken the time to send an email, I mean, who writes a handwritten letter anymore, right? I get this at the studio and I was like, who writes? That's so sweet. So that was like even doubly nice. They could have just called. They could have sent me an email, but they took the time to write a letter. Who does that? That's so classy. When you take the time in 2021 to stop and think about someone else and express that thought in a gesture, send somebody a text, whatever it is, to a total stranger, it makes a huge difference. I think that those gestures are tremendous, and that also is part of the community building. This is a big world, and it's often a very, very cold world. When you receive some kind of warmth from an unexpected source, that keeps you going for days.
So I go out of my way and I send somebody a handwritten letter, and it takes approximately 10 to 15 minutes of my time to think about what I'm writing, to write that letter, to get the address, and to send it. And then I get no response. So it makes me feel the next time that it really probably wasn't worth it. Obviously, I believe that that's an incorrect reaction, but I just want to hear from your end. Again, you meet a lot of these people. You hear how enveloped they feel by the community because people showed their sense of caring. I'm curious, like, as a person who gets no response, what should I feel?
If you're doing it because you're looking for a response, and I don't think you are, that's not what I'm saying. But if you're doing,
I don't mean me, I mean.
I know, I didn't mean you. I meant the ubiquitous you, right? When you are performing a gesture for the benefit of someone else, you can have confidence in the fact that that gesture is well received. If you're looking for a response or you're hoping for a response, then the gesture is no longer about them, it's about you. I wish for a second that I was in the studio right now, not because I want to be in the studio on a Saturday night, but if I was in the studio, you would see a walls and walls and walls of Nachum Segal paraphernalia and memorabilia from the last 38 years. And it's stunning. Why is it stunning? Because there are notes and pictures and cards and reminders and gestures that we have received, that Nachum has received. Forget his photo albums that he has and his collections that he has. All of these things that he has that are gestures from other people. They keep us going. They are so well received, even if the person doesn't hear back. I can tell you, I'm never letting go of that letter that this person wrote. Never. And you can ask anybody in my family. I lose and throw out everything. I will always know where this letter is. Always. Right now it's on the top of the microwave. I know exactly where it is. But we know where this stuff is. We know it because it means so much. But if these gestures, the purity of these gestures, in that you're not necessarily expecting a response. And if you are, then the gesture becomes more about you than it becomes about them. There's the gratification, the feel-good moment should be in committing the act of kindness, not necessarily in receiving the kindness back.
The reason why I find this especially important is not only because of everything we've said, but particularly coming from someone who has a media background. I wonder, do you sometimes feel that there's like a whole facade that is put up not by Nachum Segal Network, but let's say from your days in Fox? Do you feel that there's a whole facade that's put up and really the real life that's behind that does not match up with who that person looks like or is? I think when you talk about letters and being your genuine self and really communicating with other people and sharing of yourself and helping them or offering, is that something that you see as a major contradiction? Is that something that you see is an antidote maybe to some of that?
I think that there's a real differentiation that always has to be made between the on-camera personality and the off-camera personality. And unfortunately, again, Dave just commented in the group whether or not people are fake. Are people in general fake? Listen, Dave, I don't know you, but I can tell you I am the most, hi to Ralph Rosenbaum, by the way. I can tell you I am the most real, direct person you'll ever meet, for better or for worse. I am, if I'm angry with you, if I'm happy with you, that's just the way I am. I can't fake it till I make it. It's not how I'm wired. Again, another reason I shouldn't be on cable TV. I'm just not that person. And from me, you will always get the most honest of beings. And again, that's for better or for worse, but that's who I am. And in general, are people on TV fake? I can't speak to everyone. I can tell you that the people that I worked with at Fox were always lovely and were always very real. And Stuart Varney, who was the host of Varney & Co., and then Charles Payne, who I worked with on a number of occasions. They are lovely, lovely people who are real family men, who have their hearts in the right place. And whether you agree with their politics or you don't agree with their politics, they're good people. And everyone I met there at Fox Business was really just a solid person. So but again, there is that on-air persona, no matter what. There is that need to have that camera personality, and it's hard to shut that off. It's hard to remember that that's not your life. Your life is what goes on in your home.
I think in a world of social media, it becomes not only the people who are on camera, but it's everybody is basically on their own platform. And, everybody puts up some kind of persona that may or may not be who they really are. And I just feel that the perspective that you shared about showing people who your genuine self is and showing them that you care and extending a warm gesture to them is so powerful and is so important. And it's at least one very, very thoughtful and meaningful takeaway that we can have from this evening. So maybe we'll wrap it up in the next 5 or 10 minutes. I'm just curious if you have any important takeaway messages that you'd like to share before we finish up here tonight.
I think that I would wrap it up by saying that as a person, I joke that I talk for a living, and obviously that really, is a good just quick one-liner, right? For something that I do. I talk for a living. Obviously that's pretty obvious because I've just been rambling on, and you could have cut me off at 10 different times and you haven't, and I appreciate that. But I take my words very seriously. And listening to Rabbi Glatt in shul this morning and listening to you last week when we talk about the power of words, I know that I've said this to you before, and I feel very strongly about it, especially in this day and age. Social media is like a loaded gun. Either you know how to use it or you don't. And if you don't know how to use it properly and you're not going to use it safely, you should stay away from it. And the same thing is true with the words that you choose. Netzor lashon chamera. Like we're supposed to choose our words and speak in a way that is not going to cause harm. And as a person who talks for a living, I take that very, very seriously. And I know that the words that come out of my mouth represent my boss. And I exist in a strange world, because when you go to bat for somebody in normal life, when you go to bat for somebody and you want to stand in front of them, it's a family member, it's a spouse, it's your child, of course, but it's not your boss. But that's part of what I do. And so when I'm on social media, I'm very careful, or on the air or on this Zoom, I'm very careful about the words that I'm using and the things that I'm sharing, because I know that I'm reflecting on my boss. But I also know that on a much more national and global level, I'm representing my people, and that my words can affect change in a positive way or in a negative way. And we are, as Jews, supposed to, or expected to argue. We're supposed to challenge. We're supposed to ask questions, but we're supposed to do so respectfully. We're supposed to choose our words carefully, so at the end of the day, we can sit down and have a meal together, even if we didn't agree with each other an hour beforehand. And that is missing. And so when I say every morning, Hareini mizamed et pila hodot le'alel l'shabech et bori, I am preparing myself to use my mouth to praise my God, to bring holiness to the words and to my day. I take those words seriously because I know that I talk for a living. And so I really took to heart both Rabbi Glatt this morning and your drasha last week in the power of words. And I think that, as I am not just speaking about politics, and I'm not just talking about anything, and I am also talking about social media. I mean, if we're going to learn anything, if we're going to have any major takeaway, it's that I talk for a living. My words are everything. They reflect on my family. They reflect on my kids. They reflect on me. And Lord knows Stephen puts up with enough. I should only reflect on him well. But we have to choose our words carefully as a people. And we have to think about how those words are going to land. Once they leave your mouth, how are they going to land? How are they going to be received? And I think that once we do that, we'll make tremendous headway. We have to consider that, and we don't. We lost our way in that, but we can get back.
Okay, wow. I thank you for sharing that. I thank you for sharing all of your experiences and making this evening a very meaningful one for all of us. Thank you to everyone for joining and for making this a priority for your Matzah Shabbos, for your Saturday night. And Mirz Hashem next week, we hope to continue with the OU. Rabbi Pardo has put together a great schedule. Unfortunately, you had to sit with me for 2 weeks in a row, but we'll see who next week brings. And I wish everybody a Shavua Tov, a successful week, and a week filled with wonderful things.
Thank you.
Thank you again.